Nobody inside the MotoGP paddock expected Yamaha to blink first. For decades, the brand stood alone, loyal to its inline-four identity, proud, stubborn, and convinced that precision could still beat brute force. But behind closed doors, something radical was taking shape. Something that would quietly rewrite Yamaha's philosophy and possibly divide its own garage. Because this wasn't just about switching to a V4. Rumors began spreading that Yamaha wasn't building one future bike, but two very different ones. And if that was true, the consequences would reach far beyond 2026. For years, Yamaha's message never changed. The inline-four was smoother, kinder on tires, more precise in corner speed. It was the engine that carried legends to titles and defined an era of MotoGP racing. But results don't lie forever. As Ducati's V4 army multiplied and rivals adapted faster, Yamaha's advantage slowly evaporated. Straight-line speed became a weakness, aero exposed limitations, and the margins at the front grew brutally clear. Internally, the pressure was suffocating. Engineers knew the truth long before it was admitted publicly. The inline-four had reached its ceiling, and every test that passed without answers only tightened the strain. So when confirmation quietly emerged that Yamaha was developing a V4 for 2026, the paddock froze. This wasn't evolution. This was surrender or salvation. But the real shock wasn't the V4 itself. It was how Yamaha planned to use it. On paper, Yamaha's V4 looked like a catch-up project, a necessary response to Ducati's dominance. But insiders suggested something more complex was happening. Instead of chasing a single, universal solution, Yamaha appeared to be exploring multiple development paths at once. Different power delivery philosophies, different chassis balances, different ways of extracting grip and stability. It was as if Yamaha no longer believed one bike could suit every rider. And that idea alone sent quiet ripples through the paddock. Because MotoGP history had proven one thing repeatedly: when a manufacturer splits focus, tension follows. And Yamaha was about to introduce two riders who could not be more different. Jack Miller's arrival at Yamaha surprised many. But inside the factory, his value was obvious. Miller wasn't just fast. He was fluent. Honda, Ducati, KTMs. He had lived inside three very different V4 philosophies, their strengths, their weaknesses, their temperaments. When Yamaha committed to the V4 path, Miller instantly became more than a rider. He became a reference point, a translator between old identity and new reality. Yet there was a twist. Despite his experience, Miller didn't immediately receive a V4 race bike. Testing limitations, timing, and internal priorities meant his role remained strangely undefined. Privately, that raised eyebrows. Because if Yamaha truly trusted his insight, why keep him waiting? Some insiders believed the answer lay not in Miller, but in who was coming next. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu doesn't enter MotoGP quietly. He never has. A multiple-time Superbike champion, his style is explosive, aggressive on the brakes, fearless on corner entry, emotionally charged. But MotoGP is unforgiving to outsiders. Different tires, different electronics, different physics. And yet Yamaha didn't see Toprak as a risk. They saw him as a data disruptor. Unlike existing MotoGP riders shaped by years of Michelin-era habits, Toprak arrives without bias. His feedback would be raw, unfiltered, honest. That made him perfect for a new project. But it also created a dangerous question. If Yamaha was building a V4 for the future, who was that future really for? Officially, Yamaha insisted all riders would have equal machinery. Unofficially, whispers told a different story. Engineers quietly acknowledged that different riders demanded different characteristics. Miller thrived on stability and rear grip. Toprak attacked the front and demanded braking support. Trying to force both into a single philosophy could dilute progress. So the idea emerged: develop parallel concepts under one umbrella. Not publicly labeled as Bike A and Bike B, but subtly distinct. Different stiffness, different torque delivery, different compromises. To outsiders, the bikes would look identical. Inside the data, they would not. And that's when tension began to surface. Because once riders sense divergence, trust becomes fragile. Publicly, Miller was positioned as the guide, the experienced hand helping Toprak adapt. Privately, the dynamic was far more complicated. Miller knew that development leadership often decides careers. Toprak knew that raw speed can shift priorities overnight. Both understood what was at stake. Helping a teammate can elevate the project, or quietly accelerate your own replacement. And Yamaha stood directly between them, trying to balance collaboration with competition. It was a delicate game. One wrong upgrade, one perceived preference, one test result taken out of context. And suddenly, the garage atmosphere could change completely. Yamaha's V4 promised everything on paper: acceleration, braking stability, aero compatibility. But early development rarely delivers clarity. Balance issues emerged. Electronics required recalibration. Chassis feedback conflicted. Some riders adapted quickly. Others struggled to feel the limit. And while public comments remained cautious, body language told its own story. This wasn't a plug-and-play revolution. It was a gamble layered on top of another gamble, changing engine philosophy while redefining team hierarchy. If Yamaha failed to unify direction, the V4 wouldn't save them. It would expose them. The stakes couldn't be higher. 2026 represents the final year before MotoGP's next major regulation reset. Whatever Yamaha learns or fails to learn will echo into the next era. That makes every test session critical, every data point valuable, every internal decision irreversible. Rivals are watching closely. A divided Yamaha is an opportunity. A confused development path is a weakness. And inside the factory, the question remains unanswered. Will Yamaha commit to one philosophy, or double down on two? 9. The silence before the reveal. As winter testing approaches, Yamaha says little. No bold declarations. No technical boasts. Just quiet preparation. But those closest to the project know, once the engines fire, everything becomes visible. Which bike gets the latest update? Which rider receives priority feedback? Which concept evolves faster? The truth will surface without words. And when it does, it won't just define a season. It will define Yamaha's future. Yamaha built its legacy on conviction, on believing its way was the right way. Now, for the first time in a generation, that certainty is gone. The V4 isn't just an engine. It's an identity shift. And whether Yamaha builds one future, or two competing visions under one roof, will determine if this bold move becomes a rebirth, or the most complicated gamble in MotoGP history. Because in racing, shock doesn't come from change alone. It comes from what that change reveals. And Yamaha